fly back off now, doesn't she? I mean, everyone respected her, obviously, because she's been champion, hasn't she?
Yeah.
5 times.
But sometimes you need to know when to.
Hasn't really got the voice.
Yeah.
I thought she was in pain.
Paul McCartney.
And then the last match was brilliant against it's the Italian Yannick.
Hello, everyone.
Yannick Sinner, and he's Italian, got red hair.
Okay.
Brilliant he was, and that was a really good match. We didn't get home till 11:30 last night.
Oh, it's amazing.
It was, but
watching it live is totally different.
Oh, totally.
The speed and they play to the edge.
My mum would be jealous of that. My mum stays up all night to watch tennis matches sometimes.
I learned an interesting tennis fact. Apparently, we owe the colour of the yellow tennis ball to David Attenborough. Because he was a TV presenter at the time that tennis went from black and white to colour. And, hello Trish, and the tennis balls were originally white and they weren't showing up. You couldn't see them over the net or when they crossed the line. So he said to them, why don't you make the tennis balls bright yellow now we've got colour TV so we can see clearly? And then it wasn't until like 1972 that tennis balls became officially day glow yellow, and that's down to David Attenborough on the news. So that's amazing, isn't it?
They're usually yellow more at night.
You can see it, and because I suppose if you think about it from the black and white to the colour, it made a difference to see. Yeah, like I can remember watching snooker on the black and white telly, and I never knew what colour ball was going where, to be honest.
The first colour was pretty diabolical.
Yeah.
Massive televisions, rather different.
Yeah. Right, so I've got 2 eyes there. Does anybody want to trace?
yes.
I think I might give Tracy a go.
You need to pop that underneath. Right, carbon paper. There we go. You need to press down hard. You need to get some more of this. Press down hard on that for tracing. And Jackie will be squeezing the paint out now. We know who we have and who we haven't got. Well, we had a black and white telly much later because we just couldn't afford the colour telly or the colour licence, because black and white telly was cheaper, wasn't it?
I had black and white as a student to get round the licence.
But yeah.
I've got crimson. Can I use a red, or does it have to be?
What red have you got?
I've got 2. I've got permanent rose.
Yeah, permanent rose. Yeah, because cadmium red's more orange, rose is more purple based.
Right. Okay.
And for skin, you generally want more of a purple tone. I had a really cool, in the 80s, a little portable telly radio thing that I just had with an aerial. It was really cool when you think about it. That was amazing for its time. It was like a little, it wasn't very big, like a cube, a cream, a little cream thing, and you had, it could be in a radio alarm clock or it could be a telly. I mean, you very rarely got an amazing signal, and you had to like extend the aerial. Oh, a dial, I loved. But you know, I love all of that kind of stuff. And I find it hilarious because I actually watch more stuff on my iPad than I do on my telly. And the iPad is around about the size of the original TV screens in the 40s and 50s, isn't it? So we've almost gone full circle.
9 inch was the first size.
Yeah. And then now people have got 40 or 60 inch screens. I haven't, because I don't really watch telly. I actually linked for a while my Skybox to a projector.
Oh, yeah.
So I had like a bit like that, but not as. I mean, these projectors are about 500 quid, but the one I had at home was about 150. And as long as it was dark, it would work. So I had it projected onto the wall from the skybox, which is brilliant because I didn't have a TV cluttering up my house for the few times I wanted to watch something on telly. But I've only got a tiny little TV now. I've got.
Since the digital age, I don't think it's got that much sharper.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although I'm using an old 20-odd-year-old Bush TV DVD video combi unit, which has got a very small screen on it. Because my house is very vintage, and I've made it look like an old 1940s Bush TV. But I found that I can't even watch Blu-ray DVDs on it because it's that old. It won't accept them.
Really?
Hilarious.
Well, we're just tracing the. We don't need to trace all the eyelashes.
No, don't trace all the eyelashes. Thank you, Jackie. Just the outlines. What I would suggest is, you know, the thickness of the skin or the eyelid where the eyelashes start. I'd indicate that, especially on the lower lid, because it does make a difference. People often forget that when they're sticking eyelashes on. They almost stick them right inside the eye. You were not late. Thank you, Jackie.
Oh, did you want the receipt, Kathy?
No.
See you in the morning.
Yeah.
Wednesday tomorrow, isn't it?
Apparently.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jackie.
It's just the basic eye shape. You don't.
Really, yeah. I've kind of indicated roughly where my eyebrows are going to go, but I'll end up probably painting over that anyway because I'm a terror. Trish, are you watching now, painting later? And Rosemary, I'm assuming you're painting along, aren't you? What I'll do in a minute is I'll zoom in on the one eye that we'll work on, because then that'll give you as much detail as possible. Now, for those of you that were here for the David Bowie portrait, you'll notice actually that the colour palette is the same.
Yeah.
This tends to be my skin tone palette, and this covers hair, it covers any skin tone, and eyes. I just use it for everything. So the black and white, ultramarine, burnt sienna, a crimson, and yellow ochre.
Just remember I haven't paid back
Hello
my debt.
again. Oh, well, you not could have waited till tomorrow.
No, because I'll forget.
I won't forget.
Oh, I will.
So it'll just be little brushes, won't it?
Yeah, little fiddly ones. Thank you, gratefully received. Happy to have helped you in your hour of need. I can get petrol tonight now. No, I won't. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So if I get any customers I will have to go and serve, but it's been a very quiet day today. Let me know when you've drawn, Rosemary. I won't move on with that. Do you know what? When you draw on canvas, it blunts your pencil.
Yeah.
So much more.
I think I was just a bit heavy on it. You said lean on. And
No, that's fine.
and
It's
crack
better off
it away.
doing that.
Yeah.
You're better off doing that, Mike.
It's come through.
Well, good. And I thought although it's a skill builder, I mean, I'd started off with a page of 5 eyes. A child's eye, an old person's eye with real big wrinkles, and these were 2 of them, and then there was a normal eye, and I thought, you know what? Oh no. That I thought I'd just pick 2, and I don't want to do just normal full front eyes, because most people never look like that in any portraits. So I thought, let's choose interesting shapes. Right, let me zoom in on eye number 1. Now, what I find interesting is if you look at the whites of his eye, it's not white. When you compare the white paper that it's printed on, it's really not at all. It is. It's very blue. I mean, the eye below isn't white, but it's also not blue. And often, I think, when it comes to drawing eyes or painting eyes, people don't consider the white of the eye. They just do it white, and it looks wrong. And also, I mean, there's so much you've got to consider with an eyeball. Your eyeball is sort of spherical. It's not perfectly spherical, but the eyelid fits on top, so it's going to cast a shadow over the eye anyway. So if you've got a ball, and then you've got, I mean, my finger's doing it, isn't it? If you imagine that's the eyeball and that's the eyelid, it's casting shadow, isn't it? And where it curves, so towards the right, it's casting more of a shadow. And depending on the angle of the light, if I just move my hand, it's cast. I'm not moving my hand, you know, the eyelid, if you like, is staying where it is. But if the light's full frontal, there's hardly any shadow. And as I move, so we're looking down on the head, much stronger shadow as it goes away from the light. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're doing this. So we're going to use some small brushes. I'll see if I can find some of my small brushes that I haven't ruined. I got told off on one of our Facebook videos that my brushes weren't good enough.
Did you?
Yeah. She deleted a comment. I think she's ended up unfollowing the shop after I replied to her. And I said, look, these videos, A, they're free. We have got an art shop full of brushes,
Yeah.
but we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and I want to show people that you can do it. Even if you haven't got the best brushes or old brushes, you can still learn how to use them properly. Plus, she said your brush is split. And I said it is split because it's a dry brush technique. It's got no water on it. I could buy a £400 brush, and without any water on it, it's gonna split. The water's not holding it together. And then she kept going on, and then she must have decided just not to bother, so she deleted everything. But I don't mind people having an opinion. But when it's not right, expect to be corrected when you're on an art education page. Well, absolutely, for dry brush technique, you don't want a perfectly pointy brush. I'm not painting detail. I want to skim it across. So I've just wet this brush. I don't know what this is. It could be a filbert or it could be a flat brush. I'm not sure. It was something. But a little flat brush will work. So we're going to try and do the whites of the eye first. Now, I think let me pull my plate over here. If we go with just the top eye at the minute, a bit of white, a little bit of blue, and a tiny weeny bit of black. To make a blue-grey. Right, now you might think, Barry, that's far too strong to be the colour of that eye. It's actually much paler than the eye itself, but I'll stick with it because it will work for what we want to do. So don't be scared to make the white of the eye not white. If it feels sticky, just add a little bit of moisture on. No, when I got my first troll on the Paint Like Monet video, which was one of the first tutorials I'd ever posted, I was over the moon. I love being trolled because it makes me feel really important that people have bothered enough to watch the video and then be really horrible to me. Right, so what I'm going to do is, it's hard to see darker lines on there, but I will add a tiny bit more black to just do underneath that top lid a little. And when I say a bit more, I mean a bit more. It's so easy just to go so heavy, and then before you know it, you've lost it. Give that a bit of a clean. And I do need new brushes, but part of me thinks if I keep just getting new brushes all the time, I'm just going to use all my stock up. Oh, thank you, Rosemary, yes. Barry's hangnail, yeah. I probably won't use it, only to troll people. I'll let that dry. I'm just going to nip to the gent. I'm going to ignore all the white spots for now, including on the eye, so we can see how we got on. What's really interesting about the pupil in this one is it's not a perfect circle. Like the eye below, you can see the pupil is very rounded against the iris, whereas this eye actually is more like a dog eye, because dogs don't have hard pupils because of the way the muscles work. It is, isn't it? It's very handy.
There's a reflection in that pupil as well.
There is. You can see the whole room.
Yeah.
What I always wanted to do, and I've never had the time to do it, is do a massive painting of an elderly person. It's probably been done before, to be honest. Huge, so their eyes are really big, maybe even bigger than we've got printed. And I would love the reflection to be what they were when they were younger. You know what I mean? So a job, or like if they've got dementia or something, to be them before. And I'm sure it's probably been done, but I've just never had the time or had any canvas big enough to do that kind of thing, but I just thought it'd be something interesting to do. Right, let's get the iris in. Now you can see that that's really mottled. It's got ochre in it, it's got blue and green in it. So if let me pivot my plate, I'll do it here. If I mix some ultramarine and yellow ochre together, that's too much ochre. There we go. So it goes a sort of mucky army green. I might start that off as the base colour. Now, unusually, I have got quite a bit of water on the brush to help me get a smoother edge to the eye, even though it's going to be darker than this, and I'm going right the way round in this, I suppose you could call it khaki. And then the important thing is, once you've covered it, is to radiate your brush strokes from the pupil out to the edge of the eye, and that will start to give you a bit of texture. So if you've got it green, that's fine. If it's slightly bluer, that's also fine, because you can use the bluer one for the upper part of the eye, look, with a bit more blue in, and the edges of the iris. I'm going to switch to a round brush to give me a little bit more detail. Oh, nearly had a blob of water land there where I didn't want it. So this is blue mixed with ochre, and then I'll flick some of the outline in. I might have to switch brushes because I've lost the point. So a lot of blue with a little bit of yellow ochre gives us a nice dark edge. I'll just switch brushes for a minute because I've done something to that brush just now and it's decided to split and paint two lines, so I've gone for a smaller brush to allow. And it won't start looking right until far more of the aspect in. I've really changed the angle of that eye. That's better. Ooh. So play around with the colours, add more yellow ochre and a little bit of white to give you the lighter flecks, and just paint them as little dashes and lines in the eye, but sort of radiating out. So I've added more yellow ochre and white to get this colour. I do love that with acrylics you can just keep going until it becomes an inch thick. You know, you just keep not working, that's fine, just paint over it. A bit of neat yellow ochre with a bit of white maybe. There's so many tones in this, isn't there? And to be honest, we're not worrying too much about whose eye this is. So if it doesn't look like this person's eye, it doesn't matter. We're just after an eye with some nice flecks inside it. But whatever we do, we don't want it to go pure white, because that is where we need that contrast. Have you ever seen a photo of an eye up close? Like a macro up close? It's absolutely fascinating. It's almost let's see if I can find one. Absolutely fascinating. Right, are you ready? Look at that. That's what everybody's eye looks like. That's your muscle contracting to create the iris. It's fascinating, isn't it? So all the little flecks in there are actually gaps in the layers of skin. I just think it's absolutely wonderful and so different to how you would imagine an eye looks. Here's another one, a brown eye. But look at that, how close up that eye is to get all of that pattern in. It's almost like macrame or cross stitch or something. You wouldn't think that was an eye, would you? Really, it looks very alien. But it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I might pop the black pupil in now, because that, if you're starting to get a bit unsure how dark or whatever, the black pupil has to be the darkest bit. And as I say, we're ignoring any light sources at the moment.
So that's just pure black.
Pure black. There's enough water on there to get the paint moving, but not so it's runny. It's reflecting the light at the minute, so that's why it's doesn't look that black. But you can also mix some black with your bluey green colour if you wanted to get some real dark parts in the top of the eye and around the side. I've just noticed the skin on that, the eyeball. I've created a funny shape. That's better. It honestly changes so drastically when I mean, Paul, you've done 2 portraits with me now, haven't you?
Yeah.
2 totally different skin tones, but it never ceases to surprise me just how much one bit of colour or one line will totally. I mean, this is after 25 years teaching. I still go, wow, I can't believe that one line
One stroke.
can just totally transform it and make it, bring it together.
That's what I
And
find quite interesting about portraits.
it's magical.
Yeah.
It is really magical. And I'm actually looking, and at the tear duct on this eye, it is almost exactly the same colour as the skin tone. In my head, if I was making it up, I'd have done it much pinker, you know. But it's not, is it? It is the same colour. So let me have a think about this colour for a second. I reckon if we mix a bit of crimson, a bit of ochre and a bit of white, maybe a bit more white, that'll do, just for a slightly pinker flesh tone. And I'm going to be using a small brush again to just
Sorry, what was that?
crimson,
Yeah.
ochre, about 50-50 of both of those, and then just add white to lighten. And I'll add black to darken all. I've just dropped my brush in the black paint. That's clever. Move that out of the way. So I might use a tiny bit of black to darken it where I need the darker lines to show through. And it will go grey, but that's okay. Because again, where this tear duct is casting a shadow via the eyelid. So again, we go in dark. We'll add highlights to the eye, but we can leave that. So I've got that skin colour and I've added a bit of black to some of it to allow those greyer tones, which also appear in the... they're quite hooded eyes a little bit, aren't they? Because you can't see the top of the eyelid very clearly. The skin of the eyebrow is over the top of it. So again, that's that grey pink, isn't it? Where you've got that definite crease. Let's see if I can do that. So that's the pink with a bit of black.
Those shadows you put in on the tear duct.
Yeah, that's black with the
pure black.
mixed in with the pink,
Oh, okay.
but only some of the pink. So keep some of the pink, and then add a little bit of black to it. It will really make you look at people differently once you do this. I mean, portraiture does that to a certain degree, but actually, when you look at eyes, I did a class many years ago on eyes, and the students were like, "Do you know what? I've never even looked at my own eye this closely. I can't believe it looks like that." Because we don't look, do we, really? I mean, sometimes we try not to look at our faces at all, if we can help it. See if I can go a bit darker with the inside of that crease. and runny black is really good for outlining.
So that over the eye.
That's the dark colour that I've started off in where the crease of the eyelid is,
Yeah.
and then in the dark colour, then I've added while it's wet some of the lighter pink colour so it graduates. However, if I added a bit more white, look, I've then got that little highlight that you can see.
Yeah. But that colour, that base that you've started with,
Is the black with the pink.
black with pink.
Yeah. No, I was really impressed with your Bowie, Kathy. And seeing it on, was it on your fridge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always put what I do with you on my fridge for the week till I take it down for the next one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you think it makes a difference seeing it
Yes,
with fresh eyes?
definitely.
Because
And
we're very
also-
critical, aren't we?
I think, like, I take it home and think, oh god, that was very good, and I put it on the fridge, and after a couple of days I look at it and think, well, it's not that bad. Do you know what I
Exactly,
mean?
yeah.
Like,
I mean, I know some artists that when they're not sure if they're finished or not, they will put their painting in a cupboard for 2 weeks
yeah.
to get it out and then go, oh yes, that looks wrong, or do you know what, I can live with that, or
Yeah.
I don't like that, but I like this. You need to have that space to stop being so critical and a brain break from it,
Yeah.
because it does make a difference. It really does. What with?
Just the colours have not come out as well as
Your pinks.
I'm going back over it.
Yeah, do that. There is a colour, and it doesn't always. I don't know. I'll go and see if I've got a tube of it downstairs.
A bit salmon pink. I find I can't do it fast enough in these classes.
No, I've not got one. But most acrylics, I must have sold out, do a sort of flesh tint
I've got
or
a
skin
brush.
tone. Yeah, but they do. They used to be called flesh tint. I think Dale Rowney called it portrait pink. Winsor and Newton used to call it flesh tint, but now it's called pale rose something,
Right.
and it's quite a bright. Actually, I can show you it in oil form.
I think flesh is quite political with it, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is. That's why they've changed it in the last year from
Yeah.
flesh tint. But it's actually
Yeah,
that sort of tone.
yeah.
And it's originally a bit of history. Back in the Renaissance, flesh tone was a colour called Cinabrasa, which is a proper vibrant salmon colour. But that would work because the skin underpainting was green and grey. So you'd paint the colour in that all of the skin was called painted in verdaccio, which was a made-up colour of all the colours on the palette, and it made up a similar colour to our eye colour, our eye white, but a bit of blue in, a bit of ochre in it, so it was like a greeny grey. and they paint all the skin in that colour, and then all of the shadows they paint in a dark green, and then they glaze this Chinabraser skin tone over the top, and it neutralised the green, and then they'd highlight with white the Chinabraser to make it slightly lighter for every bit of highlight. And that's why in the old paintings a corpse looks green, because they put less skin tone on. It's absolutely fascinating how they did it all, and did it so beautifully. I need to mix up more skin. I don't know why I was quite tentative with how much skin I was going to make when we're painting eyes. That's better. Right, if I make a very, very pale flesh tone with white added to it, I can then do the lid, the lower lid, right against the eye, which is really pale compared to the rest of the skin tone, because there's not really an eye bag as such, but you need that definition. I might make that a little bit lighter in places. That's the same colour, although I have had to make it again, so there's every chance that it's a little bit lighter. I should have just
So that's touch of red, touch of ochre, touch of black.
touch of white.
White.
Yeah.
A touch of red, touch of
Okay. Yeah, just to make your flesh tone stand out a bit more. But I might make that lower lid a bit paler still, because it's almost white. There is going to be some darker tones on this eye. Touch of crimson, touch of ochre and white. Vary the white. Now what I'm doing with this is I'm putting it where all of the white, the lighter tones of the skin are to start with. So that's upper and lower lid, and I'm really pushing it in, because we're only doing a bit of the face, we're not doing a whole face. I'm not going to worry too much. And then I'll have to mix up some more darker tone, which is the same colour with a bit of black in. The thing you'll find though is if you add black to the lighter colour of your skin tone where you've added white, it will just go very grey, whereas if you add it to the deeper skin tone colour, it will just be like a nice darker skin tone. It's very fascinating how it all works. I mean, you might have some left over. I haven't, unfortunately. I was hoping that we could maybe get an eye done before the coffee break, perhaps. I don't know. Because what will happen is where you've got your flesh tone and you're adding the black to it, it might start to go a bit purple. And that's a really good sign, because skin tone tends to be a bit purple when it's darker. And that'll be down to the amount of crimson you have. In fact, there's part of that eye where it actually looks blue under that tear duct section, doesn't it? There's a bit of a hint of a bluey vein right here. You might want a few brushes on the go at the same time for this, because it's difficult to blend, especially when there are things that are drying.
Yeah, I find that hard.
It is, it's really hard, and to be honest, that's why a lot of people don't like acrylics, because I like the fact that you can go over it. I think that's brilliant, but I don't like the fact that it dries really quickly. However, I love oils, but I don't like the fact that oils take too long to dry. I think I'm just impatient, you know. A damp brush is the best way forward, rather than a soaking wet brush or a drier brush. Always keep your brush damp. I've lost that definition of the eyelid there. I'll have to put that back. And I think I'll have to do a very runny outline where the skin meets the eyelid at the bottom of runny dark skin tone. I might give those of you that have got materials, I might give you a rigger brush, because I forgot about that. And a rigger brush should be ideal. Yeah, oh, that's a good skin tone. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, nice. But what I love is that we've all got the same colours, but I can almost guarantee we've all made up a different flesh colour.
Yeah. That's what happened with the portrait.
Yeah. But they're all skin tones, because everybody is in a, we've got a spectrum of skin tones, haven't we, really? But the colours that we're using, you can make every skin tone, whether it's a real rich African skin tone or even a pasty Celtic skin tone like me, from the colours on your palette.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I just love art. It's a good job, really.
Scottish skin.
Yeah.
So, I feel very happy.
Almost transparent I am, yeah. It's funny though, because Jackie's Celtic, but her skin's far more olive than mine. Mine's just really pink.
You get that with South Walians.
Yes.
You get really quite swarthy
Yes.
Celts.
Yes, they do. And they go really, really deep olive tan, don't they? They get such a dark tan. I used to go a honey colour when I was a kid, but as I've got older, I suppose once I hit the teen years, I didn't leave the house. I was never seen in sunlight.
Yeah.
As a ginger. Just adding a few lighter bits. I mean, technically, you could argue, well, we're doing an eye, not a portrait, so the skin tone isn't as important. But it's the skin that kind of needs to be attached to the eye to make it look like an eye. How's it going, Rosemary, dare I ask? I have a tendency of being impatient. And in that impatientness, I end up adding too much water on my brush just to try and get it to cover.
Yeah.
And then it just blobs and goes wrong. And I've been doing that all of my life, and I've never learned. I think that's looking okay. Because, I mean, we've got no highlights on this, and we've got no eyelashes or eyebrows on this, have we?
Yeah, no,
Not yet.
that's the exciting bit.
It is the exciting bit, and it's what will bring it all together. Hopefully. It's amazing how much you have to interchange between the lights and the darks and the mids, isn't it? You kind of in oils, you see, you just have several brushes on the go with each colour on it, but oils don't dry. However, with acrylics, in an ideal world, you'd have several colours on the go, but on a day like even today when it's a bit rainy outside, it still will dry quite quickly. Need one more darker bit for that corner. It's probably a bit too dark now. I'm going to be doing an oil class on a Saturday in December, just 2 hours, where I'm going to do it traditionally. We're going to do the underpainting in acrylics, but using a colour similar to Verdaccio, and then glazing oils on top. So that'll be quite fun. I use the word fun loosely, of course.
Frustrating.
It's all on the beholder, isn't it? I'm thinking that may well be as far as I can go with this without putting the other bits on. That crease needs darkening, I think. So when you want detail, you want a thin brush with very runny paint, and you'll definitely need that for the eyelashes and highlights. The hardest thing in acrylics, well, in any paint actually, is getting the paint fluid and getting opacity. You either can get a nice strong colour but it's blobby or patchy, or you can get a beautifully flowing colour or it's transparent.
Have you just outlined the eye in black?
That lower lid, I did it in a dark flesh tone because it just wasn't, I know it's not like that in the photo, but it just wasn't feeling like the eyelid was separate from the eye, and it kind of works. And I'll put some highlight on it in a minute just so we can see how it works. have a play with a bit of, I'm using a thin brush, a rigger brush, and I want the white to be fluid but not transparent, which is really hard to do. Really hard to do. And I'm just finding the little areas where we've got highlights, including the whites of his eye. But there are some parts of the whites of the eye that are more glazed, which is just a runnier version of the white. So you can see where I'm adding the stronger white to start with. So that's white with a bit of water. I don't think I'm going to recreate that whole living room, to be fair. Not sure I've got the energy. And once you've done the really bright stuff, just add more water to your white, and that'll give you the more transparent stuff. And if it doesn't go totally transparent, just keep adding water until it does. No, that is pure white. It's just, yeah, it just looks a bit bluer for some reason. It's because I've had to dilute it, and the grey of the painting underneath is sort of dictating. But actually that does also mean I can kind of give a bit of a runny white glaze on the lower part of the white of the eye. I know it's not technically there. But it just makes it feel reflective. There's a very fine line in art where you either go fully photographic or you cheat. I'm very much in the camp of cheat. I just want the eye to feel reflective. I don't want him to cry. But I think that looks alright. I mean, if we were going to be really detailed, you can do white glazed speckles on the lid and around the eye, on the skin tone, and that's literally just little dots and dabs on the skin where it's catching the light. I'll do a bit, but you don't have to do this. Almost like painting pebbles. Tap it with my finger just to soften it. I don't know if you've ever seen many portrait paintings up close, but a lot of artists tend to choose faces to be a lot bigger than in real life. And that's honestly because it's just easier to do. Because an eyelash, when it's huge, is easier to paint with a thin brush. Whereas if you're trying to paint an eyelash that's an eyelash width, you literally need to use a brush that's thinner than an eyelash. Because once you've got the paint on there, it then thickens the brush up. Are you feeling a bit happier, Michael, with acrylics?
Yeah.
because you can cover it all up and you can.
It gives you time.
Exactly.
The watercolour, it's just so unforgiving.
It is, and also with watercolour, you have to work from your lightest colour to go darker. With acrylics, you could put the dark down and work lighter, or any which way you want to, which is so much better. Right, before we do the eyelashes, while you're finishing off, I'm just going to nip and do the drinks. Paul, what are you having?
Usual black.
Black Americano, isn't it? Yeah, black coffee.
I'm alright, thanks.
Are you alright, Michael?
Americano black.
The
as
same.
well, please.
You ruined your room.
My eyeball.
What about your
I'm doing it again. I can't get the colours and I can't get that reflection right, so
Well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Just paint it out.
yeah.
Take a deep breath and start again. 2 black Americanos.
And that to me looks like a mirrored eye. I just can't get it to look like that at all.
I think that's doing it for 25 years.
Yeah.
It just
I just can't
makes
do
a big
it.
difference.
looks better, Kathy.
Looking good.
Are you a very self-critical
Yes.
person?
I'm terrible.
I think there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's counteracted with a bit of balance,
Yeah.
and you're kind to yourself occasionally. We've got some little things, I don't know, I think there's brownie and something. Oh, well, look. Don't want any. So I'm going to put eyelashes on this now, and then we'll have to. But now you know what to expect. The other one's only half an eye. Different colour white though. So I'm basically just going to go black and water in a thin rigger brush. But what I want to do is kind of look at how the lashes, like the lower ones are fine because they come from there and they come down, and they always tend to form little V shapes. The tricky one here is the upper lids lashes, because you can't see where they start from and you can't see where they actually are, and there seems to be a heck of a lot of them.
Is that a dry?
A really runny rigger. The rigger brush is the one I'm just giving you, that one,
This one?
and you have the paint like ink,
Right.
and you roll the brush in it so it gets loads of paint and a point.
Okay.
I love a rigger brush. It's good for hair, branches on trees. Have you not got one? Do you want to borrow one? Yeah, it is. So yeah, your black has to be almost the consistency of ink. And honestly, once you've put that on, I might hint at a bit of eyebrow. You see, the bottom eye, I think, is definitely a female eye. This top eye, I don't know, you know. It could be either, couldn't it? I'm here till 9 tonight. Well, I was here till 9 last night, but none of the students turned up. Only Rosemary online. And I could have had the night off. Oh, Rosemary, I've got an idea. Before I make a decision, I've chatted to Jackie about it, and I thought, since you're the most regular one, even though you're online, my Tuesday evening classes, the Drawn to Acrylics, are really popular. I get about 6 or 7 or more every week, but they only run from Easter to September because I do those art history lectures in Byfield. The Monday evening classes, as you know, we struggle to get anyone to come in real life. And I thought, what if I run the Monday evening ones in the winter? So they're like January to Easter and then late September to December. So there won't be as many of them, but it might mean that we get more people coming. I don't know, because I don't want to get rid of it altogether. But equally, I don't want to just sit here twiddling my thumbs for 2 hours on a day when the shop isn't open, hoping that somebody's going to turn up. It's sad because, as you know, they were our busiest class pre-pandemic. I'm thinking of doing it, but I just wanted to run it by you first. Better than getting shot altogether. I'm just giving a hint of eyebrow. I'm not doing all of the eyebrow. But that makes a big difference, those eyelashes, doesn't it? They're a lot longer than you think. And you've got... it's a bit like painting trees. You've got to be random with the hair, especially in the direction that they go, how they look. But it's in the lower lids, it's that little V shape. You do one, curve it down, then you do the next one, curve it down, but join it to create a little V at the tip. The upper ones do it as well. They kind of form little V's. But I might call that eye done. Move my arm out the way. But it is the fiddly bits that make that work, isn't it? It's the lighter tones. I might glaze a bit more white on part of the eye just to make it feel wet. I'll call that a day, I think.
Rigger brush, that's R-I-G-O-U-R.
R-I-G-G-E-R, like ship rigger.
Ah, okay.
Because that's what it was used for. With a detail brush, you end up dipping it in, doing a bit, dipping it in, doing a bit, and you get irregular width of lines. But the rigger brush, they are able to paint the rigging on a ship painting from the top of the mast all down to the bottom of the ship in one go, because it holds a lot of water, but gives you a nice fluid line.
Yeah.
So you do want your paint nice and runny. I mean, you could go, if I show you how, I could go with it. And what will be fine today is that the water, although it's dirty, will be fine for the next painting, because there's nothing white in it, only a little bit. So can you see how I'm wetting it?
Yeah.
Roll the brush around in it, and that gives you nice in line. So
Yeah.
either have a play on there or even just on the
Yeah.
eyebrows.
Yeah.
I've got someone in the shop, so I'm going to have to nip down. Oh, they were just browsing. They've already gone. Does that feel better for you?
Good.
Have you used a rigger before, Kathy?
No, just thinking now, which is the first. I have tried it before and I couldn't do it, but I think doing the eyelashes, I've never used one before, but now I realise actually it's quite good.
It is, because you mean you have to really inky it up. Roll your brush back in it.
Just very, very, yeah.
I mean, it's good for branches and everything.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm just going over my eye shadow a bit.
Right, another minute or two and we'll move on. Hopefully we'll get that. I mean, it's 3:20. We might go over a little bit today.
Barry, in your magazine,
Yep.
and it might just be a technicality, but it says 4:30. Is that not what it is, really?
Not really.
No.
Pre-pandemic and before we went online, they were all of our classes were 2.5 hours.
Right.
But we found during the pandemic and since, people don't want to do 2.5 hours.
Right.
So for me, it's a 2-hour class, but we've got the extra time to go if we need. Do you know what I mean? The extra half an hour.
Yeah.
So we will be doing that today. You don't notice how grey the white of the eye is now, do you? No, it's surrounded by it. When it was the first colour, goodness me, it was just the wrong colour, it felt like. I'll have a sip of tea and then we'll move on. Also, with the 2.5 hour classes, that's back in the day we used to have 10 people in every class, 9 or 10 people in every single class with waiting lists. And when I did the coffee break, it took 20 minutes for Kathy to make everybody's drinks and then for me to bring them all up in 2 or 3 you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that took up most of the time. It wasn't even lesson, it was just me making drinks for 10-15 minutes. But all my lessons are 2 hours to 2.5 hours. It just gives us the leeway if we need it. I'm quite pleased with that eye, but to be honest, it's the eyelashes. Even the highlights didn't make it for me. It was the eyelashes that made the difference for that. It's framed the eye, hasn't it? I might need to glaze a little. This is the trouble. I'm looking at it now and I'm being a just adder, which isn't good.
This is much more comfortable for me, being able to go after it again.
Yes. And you know, even if I didn't like any of this, I could wallop a bit of white paint on and start again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is just the best thing in the world. Because you're not as scared, are you? You don't feel like you can't commit to something just in case it goes wrong. With acrylics, do it, and if it does go wrong, let it dry, paint over it again. Right, I'm going to start on the next eye. I like that. If I hold this up so you can see it in the room, the colour's a bit better.
Very good.
I do like eyes. But, you know, this one's really interesting because you can't see the corner of the eye, if you notice, because the bridge of the nose is in the way. The tear duct doesn't exist. The other corner of the eye doesn't exist because we're looking at it from its side. It reminds me of like the old Roman marble busts.
Still do the whites of the eyes first.
Yeah.
Every time.
Always do the whites of the eye. Because, and the reason for that is because it's the most unusual colour.
Yeah.
And you either have to do it first or last.
Yeah.
Because the skin tones will change how it is. But the whites of this eye are a different colour again to the other one. What I'll do is, for this white of the eye, I'm actually going to go with white. And this is my same colour for teeth, and I think this is what we did for Bowie, but you've got to be careful. A pinhead of yellow ochre. And a little bit of black. But not much. The whites of the eye. And a lot of white. A pinhead of ochre and black. And that will make a creamy grey colour. If I hold my plate up, because you'll see a better colour there, look, that's the colour we're going for. The white is your dominant colour. And then your ochre. Well, then your black, I suppose, then your ochre. The ochre's just to make it go off white. A little bit of black. A lot of white. Well, do you know what? My drawing's slightly off, even though I trace this. It's that lower lid. If I add a bit more black to it, then I can do the shadows at the same time while it's wet. Which is the underside of the lid. It's remembering that eyes are spherical, or sort of spherical, isn't it? I think that's really hard. I think if you painted eyes every day, it would make more sense to you. But the problem is, unless you're going into portraiture, the chances of you painting eyes every day are very slim. So you have to just try and remember. So I've gone off-white. Yeah, a bit too much yellow ochre by the sounds of it, which is very easily done because it's a much stronger colour than you think. I'm going to outline that lid in a grey because I know where I've gone wrong. It's this bit here. It's that lower lid. Yeah, that it does. That's better. Look, that's it. You outline it in grey. If you wanted to, you could add, whilst that shadow bit in the eye is wet, you could add a little bit of crimson. Because there's sort of veins going on in there, but again, it depends. I think once you start doing all of the veins in the eye, yes, it looks realistic, but it can also look a bit Halloween. That'll do. So I know I've got a dark white of the eye because it's not the same colour as my canvas, which is fine. You might be a bit braver now for this one, because you know what to expect, don't you? A little. Yeah, I think that's the eye. That's the bit where the eyelashes are, because you can actually see that that's the lid underneath the eyelashes there, and that's the lower lid there. Yes, so you've drawn the eyelash width.
So that's where the eyelashes.
So that's your eyelashes, and that top line is your lid.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's going to be a different colour altogether.
Well, you don't often see eyes from this angle, but I just thought if you're doing a 3/4 turn portrait, the chances are one of the eyes is going to look like this. So I'm going to be doing exactly the same photographs tomorrow afternoon in pencil, and then the same photographs on Thursday afternoon in watercolour. And I've got a feeling the pencil one might be easier because of the blending and what have you, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to visually look better. The watercolour one's going to be tricky unless we use white gel pen or gouache for the highlights. Right, let me think of the... Thankfully, the colour of that eye is basically burnt sienna.
So what colours have you mixed there?
That's just the brown straight from the dollop.
Right,
But oh right, straight brown.
Yeah. I'll add a bit of black to the edge, the outer edge. I've done that, and then I'm going to have to neaten it up with a thin brush. I tend to use my rigger an awful lot for stuff like this when I'm doing pet portraiture or anything, because it just gives me the sharpness of edges that I need. However, I'm aware for some people it's a very acquired practice. Have you got burnt sienna? Do you need a squeeze?
No, that is burnt sienna. It just looks more orangey.
Yeah, it will depend on the brand. Burnt sienna's a really funny one.
It's like a reddy brown.
It is a red brown, but yours is a bit redder.
Yeah. That's it though.
That is it. I'll show you the difference. Very
Yeah.
slightly
Yeah,
darker.
it is, yeah.
And then if I add a bit of black to some of that for the outer edge. There's hardly any flecks in this, is there? Compared to the hazel eye above.
yeah.
But there's an awful lot more highlight. I'll put some darker flecks in. Maybe even a few lighter flecks. Now, you might think, oh, I'll just add white to burnt sienna to make the light brown. It actually makes pink, because as me and Kathy were just saying, it's basically an orangey red. So I'm going to mix burnt sienna, a bit of ochre, which is your mustard colour, and then a bit of white. And that just makes it more of a biscuity brown or a milk chocolate brown rather than pink. So that yellow ochre in there just tones it down a fraction, so you can do a few lighter bits, but again, don't go mad with it.
Burnt sienna, a bit of ochre and a bit of white.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a little bit. And this isn't your highlights, this is just the different colours in there. That pupil seems to be too low down. I might paint the whole thing out. It's not in the centre of the eye for us, so I don't know what I'm sure I traced it.
Did you outline the eye in black, like a grey black?
Black and brown, because it's got darker
Yeah.
bits to it, so I think the black and brown should help. The thing I've got to remember with the pupil is that we're looking at the eye from a side, and it's like a glass dome with the pupil inside, so the pupil's not going to be in the centre, nor is it going to be perfectly round.
Well, the iris is very much in ellipse, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the rest of that eye will be done with highlights, I think. So we'll do the flesh tone, then we'll work on the highlights, and then the eyelashes exactly the same. But to me, her flesh tone's got more ochre in it, isn't it? It's a warmer skin tone,
Yeah.
but not too much ochre because they will look very ill. And that was... I'm definitely going to make up a nice amount of this time.
With the fresh tone, just the
Crimson, a bit more ochre, and then some white. So I've got to aim for a slightly more ochre tone to the one above. And to that, I can then darken it with black or lighten it with white. How's that for? Oh, it looks almost identical. Oh no, it's a little bit more orange. I'm going to do the top of the skin first, because that's where the eyebrow's going to go. There's a bit more white. Now, if you want to be more subtle with your blending, what I've done while that's wet is I've just decided to add a bit of white to it, so it blends while you're doing it, you know. But it does help if you have all of the colours pre-mixed, which is fine on a dry day, on a cool dry day. What, your brother's eyelashes were much longer than this person's? Because these aren't... We were looking... Jackie and I were looking at it this morning, and they're not false eyelashes. They're just really, really long. It's amazing. Right, I'm going to have to... I'm flitting between light, mid and dark.
So that's crimson, ochre,
And white.
white.
And then the darker tones are crimson ochre, white, and a little bit of black. And the lighter tones are crimson ochre and more white. So it's just playing around with lights and darks. Comes a point where you have to clean your brush because it's either too dark or too light or too caked in paint, which is often my case. I was watching a crafter on TikTok or something show you how to load your brush, and they load it with another brush so it stays only in the tips and not in the ferrule. And I thought, oh, we could do that, but actually you can't, because when you're scrubbing your brush on your paper, it gets further up into the ferrule, doesn't it?
yeah.
So you can't really do it in the same way. The eyelashes kind of... I've never noticed your eyelashes, Rosemary. I'll have to have a look when you come in. She said the surgeon had to tape hers out of the way. Wow. I've got eyelashes, but they're not anything really long. The bridge of the nose that is visible has to be paler, so it stands out. It's a tricky one, this one, because of seeing it from the side view. It's hard to determine what's what, because you're seeing in part of it, in the actual eye itself, you're seeing underneath the eyelid as it touches the eye, which is also much paler. So there's a lot of different tones to play with, which you might think, oh, that's good, until you actually start doing it. And there might be lines that you want to deepen with a bit more black in there, but then you think, oh, that's too much of an outline, I need to soften it again. But the beauty is it's acrylics, so you can. And the eyelashes are going to cover a lot of this. That's going to be our saving grace, is the eyelash, because this bit I think I've got wrong.
I've got it wrong as well. I haven't interpreted my tracing.
No, do you know what, Kathy? Nor have I with this one, because I've tried to imagine the eyelid, and I think...
I've got it mine in the wrong... I've got it all wrong somehow.
I think that... that's better. That shape. Because I've allowed too much space for the eyelashes. Or something.
Yeah, that's a bit... I'm getting confused.
Because under here, that's light, isn't it? You can see the underneath of the eyelid there. The normal eyelid that's visible is here, which has got to be a bit darker. But equally, I know that the eyelashes are going to sort this out. It's interesting that you're finding, Michael, that acrylics is your thing, or you're finding it easier than the watercolour. We had a student, Christine, who would have been here today, but she's had a hospital appointment and she couldn't get back in time. But what she did for the first month or two, she just booked onto watercolour, acrylics, pastels, everything, and then did it like a couple of each, and then did a process of elimination of what she knew she really didn't want to do again.
Yeah.
And then she decided to do acrylics, but from coming to acrylics for 6 months or more, she then determined, oh, I don't want to do animals, or I don't want to do such and such,
Yeah.
but I like doing this in acrylics. So it really does enable you to be flexible, which is why we don't and will never run these sessions as courses, because you've got the flexibility to dip in and dip out and do different things, which, you know, for us it probably doesn't make us as much money as doing a course and secretly hoping most of you won't attend half of it even though you've paid. But I think it works really well. I think it works in our favour that we don't run a course. And also the mill do that, and we don't want to tread on the mill's toes. But we found a lot of our students don't want to commit because of holiday. You know, the majority of them are retired. And if they signed up for 10 weeks, they might be away for 3 of them or 4 of them, or they might want to go away on a whim. Whereas if they'd booked in, they're going to feel more inclined to not book because they don't want to miss weeks that they've paid for. And again, we can kind of be fairly flexible, and you can try different things without the fear of commitment. And we also run, apart from a couple of weeks at Christmas or the odd day that I have off for singing gigs or other stuff or little mini break, we go right through the year. Because I used to work in primary education, I found that we teach a lot of teachers and ex-teachers, but everywhere closes for adult education for the school holidays. But that means that teachers can't actually do them.
Yeah.
And teachers do love learning. The vast majority of our students, I think 70-80% are in education or have been in education. And then the next lot are medical people.
Yeah.
And then religious people from different denominations. I suppose they're all stressful people-based jobs. And it's nice to come to have a brain break. I need to purple that shadow up a little bit there. I'm actually going to make a purpley grey flesh tone with the ultramarine and the crimson for parts of this face, because it's a little bit bluer than I'd got too much of a brown. And don't forget, you can, if you're not sure how well a colour will work, you can always dilute it and do it as a very soft glaze. And you can always paint over it afterwards. So no pressure painting, but I'm relying on the eyelashes and highlights like I did on the last one to really make it work. Yeah, the older eye that I was going to do today was a side view that was even more of a side view than this, but from the cheek and ear side, so you could get really craggy wrinkles, which is great, but I knew we wouldn't really be able to do it justice. Don't forget your drinks, by the way, because that was well over half an hour ago. Dry, and I think I might have to go to the highlights next. I'm almost tempted to darken the corner of the white of that eye even more, maybe with a bit of runny black, I don't know. This is where I'm being a just adder and then I'll ruin it and I'll cry. A bit better. Right, let it dry. Let's see how we do. For those of you in the room, do you want me to print off the one with all the other eyes on it so you can practice? That might I can post it within the group as well. It will have these two eyes on it.
I'm getting a feeling it might be worth having a second go though.
Well,
Yeah.
always worth having a second go. I think I've made her too wrinkly on that eye, on the under eye. I've given her too much line work. Oh, look at that wrinkly eye.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a little kid's eye down the bottom left, but I thought that would be
Yeah.
interesting.
Thank you. That looks like one of mine.
But I like the wrinkly eye because it's not a wrinkle, is it? They're like folds of fabric.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't got the finished piece on Saturday. I did a demo on folds of fabric in acrylics, and one of the people that was sitting in the demo wanted to try it, so they bought it off me for a £5. So I haven't got the original piece.
Oh, right.
But we were saying how folds of fabric and wrinkles are very similar
Yeah.
because because people just draw them as a line, but they're not a line. They go in and out.
Yeah.
It's almost like a pleat.
Yeah, we went to the Da Vinci exhibition
Oh yeah,
that they had down near Buckingham Gate
yeah,
before the COVID thing, and the way he drew textiles.
yeah. And the way he carved not Da Vinci, Michelangelo, the way he carved textiles was amazing. I've seen a beautiful modern marble statue of a woman in a veil, and how they've made the veil in marble.
Yeah.
It feels like it's just draping over a face, and yet there's no features there, but you know it's fabric draped over skin. It just blows my mind. It really does. It's funny, isn't it, how like 500-600 years later we haven't really got any artists that have surpassed them.
No.
And what I find interesting is that not so much now, but I've lectured in art history for a good 15-20 years, and the majority of the art history students don't paint or draw, so they're learning all the facts and how-tos but not applying it. Yet most of the people that do art aren't interested in art history, so they don't know all the things that could be done, which is a shame really, because a lot of art students are missing out on a huge amount of a wealth of knowledge. I need to straighten that eye up before I add the highlight. Right, so let me go in with the brighter white highlights, which is slightly diluted just to give it. Oh gosh, now this is a curve and a half, isn't it, this highlight? It kind of goes up from there and then comes round. I might have to make it slightly more dilute. And then if I do this in light, it needs to be slightly more dilute. Because we're painting the reflection of her eyelashes. Because they're casting a bit of a shadow on the eye. So your paint does have to be fluid. I mean, you could almost cheat, because this is a window and you can see the window in the eye. But if it goes wrong, you can use your eye colour to paint the window lines back in again. few little dots and dashes on the skin again to get that slightly textured skin. So it is just dots, and then dab with the finger. Might have to glaze with a bit of yellow ochre on some of that eye, because it's not giving me the warmth that I want. So it's all going to hinge on the eyelashes. You don't realise how nude an eyelid looks without an eyelash, do you? It really does totally change how things look. There is a hint of, have you noticed the hint of hair down the side of her face? That little edge of browny black, which is similar to the colour of her eyelash, because her eyebrows are a browny black mix, where her eyelashes are black, just pure black because of mascara. So if I'm going to do a little bit of the eyebrow first. Runny brown and black mix. The eyebrow instantly makes a difference as well. I may do some slightly lighter lines on here. There's a very interesting trend for ladies' eyebrows, Kathy, now, for that some of the young influencers are trying to create. And it's to try and make your eyebrows look like a feather. So they use eyebrow serum and a brush to centre parting each eyebrow and brush the top half up and the bottom half down, and it looks like you've glued a feather on it. I think I'd rather just glue a feather on it myself. Well, fair play that they keep trying different things, I suppose, but not sure how well it will catch on. When my eyebrow is wet, but when it dries, I'll do a bit of I'll add a bit of yellow ochre and white to the mix to do a few lighter hairs on there. But the eyelashes are going to be runny black with my rigger, and I'll really have to look at the shape of these, because it's amazing how, because you see that one comes down and out from there. I'm kind of flitting at them in to get the shape and length, but my black isn't runny enough.
Interesting. As they come round towards you, the ones towards the corner of your eye
Yeah.
are straight onto you.
Yes.
So they're not curved.
No. Because you can't see the curve, can you? Not as easily. That's known as foreshortening. It's flabbergasting how different just putting an eyelash on really makes a huge difference.
So that's a mixture of yellow ochre and what then?
The original eyebrow colour with added yellow ochre and white. So it goes a sort of not quite beige.
Yeah.
I suppose a biscuit or a buff colour. And you don't want a lot of them, but it just adds something. Are you looking forward to doing this one, Trish? You can see just how very little in the way of brushes we're using today. I do tend to use, when I'm doing pet portraits or anything, the smallest brushes I can get my hands on, just to try and get the detail and effect. go down back shortly. Sometimes it's good just to let it dry for a minute and then come back with fresh eyes. Yeah, I just keep adding little bits of white and then I regret it, but she's really quite reflective. It's not so much difficult, Trish, it's just a lot of faffing today. It's a faffy one. Don't you think, Paul? Let me see if I can zoom out so you can see both of them. I might do a little cheaty bit of lighter tint in her eye just to make it feel reflective a little. Well, that's okay, Rosemary. I look forward to seeing what you do when you manage to finish. But they are very different. If you are going to do any of the others, and I'll try and put the other picture on in the Facebook group with all of the eyes on, I would stick to just doing 2 eyes per page, because if you do them too small, you're going to lose the detail that's kind of needed in this. It certainly is a very brain filling exercise. Yeah, I can't do any more. I think I'll just end up ruining it if I do any more. He says, picking his brush up again. How have you found it interesting, though?
Yeah.
And for those of you that did Bowie, it's an interesting follow-up, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's just the way
Just-
things change so quickly again.
I'll tell you what I've learned is to interpret how I've traced the picture. So I know what I've done wrong on this eye now. I've drooped the eyelid.
But
and
you can't always tell until you've
I've
finished.
done it the wrong way, so it's going like that rather than like that. So it looks like she's got a droopy eyelid. I thought, I kept thinking it doesn't look right, and now I realise what I've done.
It's fairly bulbous on the bottom one, though, isn't it? The
It
eyelid?
is. Yeah, because you see, the one above has got a hooded lid,
Yeah.
so the skin of the eyebrow is kind of over the top of it, whereas she hasn't so much, and you can see the shape of the eye. Because eyelids are much thicker than we think. They really are quite thick skin.
I could whiten all that out and do it again. Because what I've done though, I've gone that way, but that actually is part of her eye. It should be that way.
Yes.
Which is why it's changed the whole look.
Yes, that's.
I mean, I could just white all that out, that bit, and then do it again.
Yeah, I think it would need it because
Yeah.
it is. That's
Yeah,
a
it's that
definite
way,
curve,
yeah,
isn't it?
that's what I'm going to do.
Do you want to see yours on the screen?
Well, we might as well do the first one, I suppose.
Hey, these aren't bad. Let's move mine out of the way. They're nice. You could even do more white on that.
Yeah, it's the cut. I thought they were too skin tones not quite right.
I don't know. I think your skin tone's right. I think your highlight on the bottom eye could be whiter.
Yeah, it's a bit dull.
It's not as reflective.
It's got jaundice on the bottom.
Yeah, you could maybe tweak it a little bit, but that one. Look, if you look, let me move the paint out of the way, because then I can slide it right up to the photo. Look,
Yeah, but
your
you get the expression totally different when you look. Yeah.
your white of the eye is pretty close for that one.
It needs tweaking, as you say, but then you can over tweak it.
You can, and sometimes you've got to wait for it to totally
Yeah.
dry
It's,
before
as you say,
you do that.
coming back to it, it's probably the best policy. Today.
Is this your first acrylic?
Yeah.
You've missed a people.
Yeah.
Unless all that in black.
Yeah.
Well, that's made a massive difference.
I'm going to do that again.
You want the hairdryer? I think, what was next week? Because next week, oh, we're doing a desert outcrop. So that might be like some sort of like Monument Valley or something like that, maybe. think, if it's in my head from what I can remember, because I planned these that long ago. I can never really remember what's going on. I thought it was something was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Right, let's see.
Just clumsing the technique on the highlights in the eye.
Well, it's all to do with the amount of water.
Yeah.
But I think you've done really well, actually.
Quite colourful by comparison with the original.
It's just, yeah, I think it's just a stronger,
Yeah, mixing the colours.
yeah. But that comes with time.
Oh yeah.
As does the amount of water and paint. And for me, it's really frustrating. If it was like a cookery lesson where I could say add 1 part paint, 2
Yeah,
parts
yeah.
water, it would be so much easier. But how we all respond to add a bit of water,
Yeah.
a bit of water to you is different to you, and
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think you've done really, really well. And you're finding out that acrylics is more your
Yeah.
thing because you've got the flexibility. And as I say, even if I didn't like what I did, I could add some more white when it's totally dry,
Yeah.
paint it out, start again, like Kathy's doing with her eye.
Reuse the canvas in fact.
Yeah. Or even just tweak bits of it and,
Yeah,
and add
yeah.
bits of it. So if you don't like a nose, you could paint the nose out and
Yeah.
start again. It's a really good skill
Yeah.
and a good medium to try.
I'm
I'll do it at home.
getting a little
That's
bit
it.
Frida Kahlo
I
with
haven't
the
obviously
mono
finished it.
brow.
No. So this isn't finished because it's had to have a bit of tweak, but this is Kathy's. They're lovely, you know. Are you pleased?
The top one I am. The bottom one, I didn't interpret how I traced it. So
No.
the eye
I think that the reason why I did these eyes is because that is what we class as a normal eye, you know, in our head.
Yeah.
It's a slight angle, but this one, it's a slight curveball. It's more of a challenge. But if you were going to paint a portrait of a 1/4 to 3/4 turn like that, this eye is going to be like that eye.
Yeah.
So it will appear if you're not careful. I've got a customer. So thank you very much, everyone. It's lovely to be